Hello everyone, this is the bonus episode to go alongside with the Auril episode. Having gone through Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, I can expand upon the discussion about Auril as she presently stands in the Forgotten Realms. As a warning though, this bonus episode contains large spoilers for Rime of the Frostmaiden, so please, if you are a player in this module or plan on being a player in this module, I highly suggest you do not listen to this episode. I am doing away with the typical structure of my episodes, and instead this will be much more of an informal episode, more so than usual. Not every topic featured in a given regular episode is going to be covered, but when one does, I'll be sure to bring it up to your attention. So the first thing I'd like to touch on is pronunciation. I've seen a couple people comment on this already around the internet, but the pronunciation given for Auril's name in this module for some reason is Auril, rather than Auril. This is a strange change, and I have to wonder whether the writers went back and checked older source books for the pronunciation given in them. The reason being that the pronunciation given across all older source books is Auril, never Auril. Either way, I'm not going to be using this new pronunciation, but if you hear people using it, please don't be difficult with them. It's not really a big deal at the end of the day, and you have better things likely in your life to worry about. Next, let's talk about personal history. At some indefinite time, other than following or during the events of the Second Sundering, Auril and Umberlee had a falling out. If you recall in the Auril episode proper, Umberlee and Auril were said to have a favorable enough relationship, but it would seem that Umberlee had a change of heart, coming to despise Auril's influence over her tumultuous waters in the northern regions of Faerun. From there, Umberlee worked to alienate Auril from the Gods of Fury by further allying herself with Talos and Malar. As all the other deities, excluding the Dead Three, distanced themselves from the Prime Material following the Second Sundering, Auril instead chose to abandon the realm she had in the Outer Planes in favor of residing on the Prime Material. What is important to note here is that whenever it was Talos revealed himself to be a separate entity during the Second Sundering, the Gods of Fury reformed their alliance. This will be brought up in the Talos episode when I do cover him next. There are a couple questionable things in this development though. First off, why would Umberlee suddenly now take issue with Auril freezing up her ocean waters? That has been happening for centuries now. Unless Umberlee is enacting a greater plan to maybe usurp Talos' superiority, or she is working on some greater scheme that involves ridding the rest of the competition in her alliance. But I think it's just as likely that the writers came up with a convenient plot to figure out a reason why Auril resides now down on Toril. Secondly, why Auril still gets to be a full-fledged deity down the Prime Material, while Baal, Bane, and Mercule do not, is beyond me. But here we are. The Dead Three certainly threw up their collective middle fingers to the Divine Edict and Ao and abandoned their deific status to run amok on Toril. There are also demigods who do reside down the Prime Material plane. We just covered Gueron Windstrom not too long ago who does just this. But Auril, to my knowledge, never has resided down on the Prime Material plane. Was she able to just get in before the cutoff point, so to speak, and abandon her divine realm before measures could be taken place against her? Did she perhaps find a way to push through the apparent barrier that now separates deity from Prime Material? Could this, along with the spell she casts, be the reason she is in such a weakened state? I honestly do not know. I can only assume at this point, which I dislike doing. At the end of the day, unless you're really deep into the lore and concerned about consistency, most folks aren't going to be bothered by these developments. But it all doesn't quite sit right with me if I'm being honest. Auril came down to the Prime Material world of Toril in what must have been 1487 Dale Reckoning. She secluded herself up in Icewind Dale. Being the malicious goddess that she is, she has cast a spell across the region that has blocked out the sun and locked the region in perpetual winter. For 2 years, Auril has placed Icewind Dale in this state. The people of the region have called Auril's prolonged winter and darkness the everlasting rime. The module assumes that you as the DM run it in 1489 Dale Reckoning or later. Now, since this is a lore channel, I prefer concrete dates, since I dislike assuming, so let's just go with the given year of 1489 Dale Reckoning. The module does point out that the locales of Icewind Dale wonder why no other deific power has stepped in an attempt to stop Auril, which is indeed curious. However, given the divine edict agreed to by most of the deities, it isn't surprising that the deities aren't intervening because they might not be able to intervene as much as they had in the past. It is alluded to that Auril feels that she is vulnerable here on the Prime Material, and that one of her enemies might seek her out to destroy her. How that is exactly, I do not know. Though I am speculating here, she also could be worried that her former allies in the Gods of Fury are going to seek her out to destroy her. Talos in particular would find the situation to his advantage to claim more, if not all, of Auril's portfolio and influence. Next we'll touch on Auril's abilities given in Rime the Frostmaiden. In order to lock Icewind Dale in a state of perpetual night and winter, Auril heads out on her white rock, the massive bird, not a stone, whom she calls Iskra, just before midnight to cast the same powerful spell nightly. This causes an aurora to pass along the night sky for all to see. As a result, the sun never rises past the horizon, and the snow is never able to melt up here in Icewind Dale. However, this is an incredibly draining spell for Auril to cast. Auril further isolates Icewind Dale from the rest of Faerun by causing blizzards along the mountain passes into Icewind Dale and causing gale force winds across the sea of moving ice. Thus, hardly anyone is leaving or coming to Icewind Dale. Traveling altogether is treacherous, as Auril has made the weather here all but unbearable. Now, since Auril is draining herself continuously each night, she exists in a perpetual weakened state. This weakened state allows mortal adventurers the chance to both challenge and possibly defeat her, though she still maintains her standing as a divine being, thus cannot be killed outright. Rather, she will be reborn at the next winter solstice, should she be defeated in this module. And I would have to imagine she would be reborn on the Prime Material plane once more. The module says that once reborn, Auril will retreat from the world to not allow herself to be killed and or thwarted by mortals again. Now, does that mean she finds an even further remote location to hide away in on the Prime Material? Or is she going to look elsewhere in the outer or inner planes? The vagueness here just makes me feel it is in the hands of the DM to decide, should that even be a consideration in their plot going forward. However, so long as she has worshippers, Auril comes back at her normal power level, which the module then states, in quote, with divine power far beyond what is reflected in the stat blocks presented here, end quote. But Auril's machinations can just as easily be cut short if the adventurers in this module manage to kill the rock Auril depends on to cast her spell. Auril must then take it upon herself to find a young rock that she can raise to serve as her mount, this process taking years to carry out. In a sense, I find the portrayal of Auril's capabilities lacking in this module. She is powerful, but I just do not find she is portrayed to be as powerful both as she could and should be, in my opinion. Her design is much in line with that of Tiamat, I find. Not quite exactly the same, but the idea that both these lesser deities have been built in such a way that they can be challenged and defeated no less by high-level parties, or in Auril's case specifically, even folks who are at the tail end of the second, moving into the third tier. My opinions aside, let's turn to Auril's given appearance in this module. Auril has 3 forms she moves through in her weakened state. In order to destroy her, for now, all 3 forms must be destroyed. Should Auril be given a chance to take a long rest, she regains all 3 forms back, despite how many she had before taking a rest. The first form is known as the Cold Crone. She appears as a hunched-over humanoid form with a snowy owl head. She has gray and white wolf fur that covers her body, black talons, bowed legs, cloven hooves, and curved goat horns that protrude from the top of her owl head. Wrapped around the Cold Crone is what appears to be a cloak and cowl made of snow. At any time, the Cold Crone can transform this cloak into owl wings that allow her to fly. Auril's second form is known as Lady Icekiss, or the Brittle Maiden. Her second form appears as a 10-foot tall humanoid woman made of frost and ice. Her eyes glow with a cold blue light, a thin mist surrounds her, Ice blades jut out from her form at odd angles, and when she moves, her body gives off crackling noises, much like ice breaking against other ice. Lady Icekiss easily forms magic weapons made of ice to wield against her enemies. Auril's final and third form is known as Winter's Womb, or the Queen of Frozen Tears. This form appears as a 3-foot diameter diamond made of ice which surrounds Auril's very divine spark. This form has a sharp point at its bottom and hovers in mid-air, all the while intense cold radiates around it. Should Auril speak in this form, it sounds as if it's coming from within the heart of this form. We'll touch on Auril's personality next. I'm happy to see that in Rime of the Frostmaiden, it is called out explicitly that Auril's divine rank is as a lesser deity. Due to her situation, Auril in Rime of the Frostmaiden is in a sour and fearful state and unwilling to engage with anyone. Auril is just as cruel as she ever was, but Rime of the Frostmaiden touches on her desire to preserve beauty in what she sees around her. Just her method to do so is by freezing things in place literally, hopefully forever. The module doesn't come out and say her reasons, so I have to wonder why Auril is causing such a stir in Icewind Dale. I presume it is because, in the face of losing her alliance with the other gods of fury, Auril feels things getting out of her control and is deeply threatened. But at least in this small region of the world, where she has secluded herself, she can manifest her control and influence in her own malicious way. Moving away from Auril, we can now touch on other aspects that are related to her faith rather than herself. Within Auril's headquarters, domain, whatever you want to call it, known as Grimskala, are 4 10 feet tall, 7 feet wide tablets made of ice. Upon these tablets are chiseled the tenets of Auril's faith. Cruelty. Quote, compassion makes you vulnerable. Let cruelty be the knife that keeps your enemies at bay. End quote. Endurance. Quote, exist as long as you can, by whatever means you can. Only by enduring can you outlast your enemies. End quote. Isolation. Quote, in solitude you can understand and harness your full potential. Depending on others makes you weak. End quote. Finally, preservation. Quote, every flake of snow is unique, and that which is unique must be preserved. End quote. Talking about rituals that are mentioned in Rime of the Frostmaiden, much like other rituals of Auril and other evil gods, the people of Icewind Dale have started carrying out rituals in an attempt to appease and dissuade the Frostmaiden from carrying on with her plans. These rituals are allowed by the Council of Speakers who govern Icewind Dale, though they allow them with clear trepidation. As such, the rituals have been carrying on for just over a year. The rituals differ from place to place, but all take place on the night of the new moon. In Bryn Shander, East Haven, and Targos they have turned to human sacrifice. A lottery is held on the afternoon before the night of the new moon to decide which person is to be offered up to Auril. The person chosen is then either stripped bare and tied to a pole exposed to the frigid elements for the night, or they are sent out in the frigid tundra with the intent that the winter and elements will claim them. Those towns that are smaller and do not have the numbers necessary to entertain the idea of human sacrifice instead offer up food as sacrifice. A day's catch of the local fish the region of Icewind Dale is known for, the knucklehead trout, is strung up outside of town for the minions of Auril to lay claim to. Finally, some locales cannot even afford to give up their food, so they instead offer up their warmth. For a night, no fires are to be lit between dusk and dawn, forcing the locals to turn to one another and other measures to maintain their body temperatures. The punishment for lighting a fire during this ritual is a severe beating. We'll talk about some specific locations that are talked about in Rime of the Frostmaiden that are directly related to Auril. Out in the Sea of Moving Ice is a skull-shaped fortress known as Grimskala. The fortress is situated on an island fittingly called Solstice that is shaped like a 6-pointed snowflake, much like Auril's holy symbol. This fortress was built and resided in by frost giants until Auril came to the prime material. The Frostmaiden has since killed almost all the frost giants in the fortress and claimed it as her personal place of residence. The island of Solstice is never exactly in the same place out in the Sea of Moving Ice. Auril can will this island to drift about the sea or anchor it in place. Auril has decorated the island with a variety of creatures encased in ice, or ice sculptures of creatures she herself has carved. Auril is very protective of these ice sculptures in particular, and does not abide by anyone messing with them. Auril has some very powerful regional abilities while on this island, which are treated mechanically like player actions. Briefly touching on them here, she's able to know the health and status of every creature on the island of Solstice, teleport to any location on Solstice, and telepathically communicate with any creature on Solstice. The ruined nethery city of Ithrin lies buried in the Ragged Glacier. When it, much like all nethery cities, fell from the sky many centuries ago, it crashed into this particular glacier. Due to the heat of this impact, it was driven further into the glacier. When it was, I don't know, but Auril then took it upon herself to bury the city under more ice and claim the ruined city as her own. I presume she did this not too long after she arrived on the prime material plane. I don't know if this was an intentional callback to Ironclare and the ruined city she laid claim to under the Great Glacier that was discussed in the Auril episode proper, but part of me feels it is. It could just be purely coincidental for all I know. Rime the Frostmaiden gives us a couple different monsters to add to the repertoire of both Auril herself as well as her faith. In particular, there are the Cold Light Walkers, Frost Druids, Frost Giant Skeletons, Ice Trolls, Snow Golems, Snowy Owlbear, and the Giant Walrus. There's only really one magic item related to Auril in this module, but I was very happy to see the inclusion of this particular item. The Codicil of White is held in Auril's personal domain. One of the pages in the Codicil contains a poem in praise of Auril, which serves as the necessary incantation to open up a path down to the ruined nethery city beneath the Ragged Glacier. It functions and is described to have the exact same features as I described in the Auril episode, though keeping out a few minor details in its physical description. Just a small update before I leave you. I apologize for the gap between the Auril episode and this bonus episode. I thought it would get out sooner, but here we are. I'm still working on upcoming episodes as well at this time. The research portion of the Talos and Malar episodes in particular are done, and I've even started into Selûne. Given my work schedule, it is difficult to say with any real certainty when things will come out, but I would say the Talos episode will be finalized and uploaded within the next couple of weeks. With that, I will leave you, and I'm ever grateful for those of you who take the time to listen to these episodes I put together for you.